Good morning and welcome to Morning Scoop for Thursday, June 2nd. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Notre Dame game is in 94 days, the game against Michigan in 178 days. Day one of Ohio State's summer camp season is in the books, and there is a lot to talk about, including a new offer to a 2023 quarterback, our first in-person look at a player who earned an Ohio State offer before he even completed the 8th grade, 3 defensive backs who earned offers, a new defensive line offer, and a whole lot more. My guest today is someone who spent the day with Mark Giffler and I at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center to see it all. He is Kevin Noon, host of the Big Me Kickoff podcast. Kevin, thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me. It was great being out there with you too, getting back out to cover camp. It was a warm day. We had a torrential downpour for a couple of minutes and then it got hotter. So maybe the weather didn't cooperate, but the talent was on display here for the first of many camps for Ohio State, and gives us plenty to talk about.
Yeah, there was a lot. We went in thinking like, oh, this is a pretty good group of players, and then there were a lot more guys we didn't know about, and then even some of the ones we were expecting to see were even more impressive than we expected. And then, yes, we got the true Ohio, if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes experience with an absolute monsoon in the middle, sandwiched between 2 extremely warm mornings and afternoons. So a little something for everyone. But what does everyone want, Kevin? Everyone wants to talk quarterbacks. That's where we're going to start. They had 2 guys in for that camp on Wednesday, both of whom were already committed to another school. And after working out in front of Ryan Day and Corey Dennis, it was Baylor commit Austin Novosad who earned the offer. So what we were in there watching him throw for both of those guys. What did you see out of Austin Novosad that maybe earned him that offer?
Yeah, I mean, he was probably the more polished of the 2 quarterbacks, and even Jax Leatherwood, the other quarterback, the 6'7" Nevada commit out of California, he even admitted it by saying that, when he was watching Austin Novosad throw, that he really had his footwork down, whereas Jax said that, mine was a little more wide open. I'm still kind of working on that. So it was interesting because Ohio State certainly has a bit of a conundrum. 2024, they got a 5-star quarterback committed in Dylan Raiola. Obviously we know what they have in terms of CJ Stroud, what they have in Kyle McCord, what they brought in Devin Brown. Now you kind of have to fit a guy here in the middle. Novosad, 6'3", buck 85 out of Dripping Springs. I was going to rapidly try and look where Dripping Springs, Texas is, because even though I lived in Texas for 5 years, I can't say that I know where it is. But he certainly looked like somebody who was able to sling the ball around, had pretty good control. They go out and they do the drill with the screen, and throw it like an inch above the screen, and I think it'd be a lot harder just to hit the top of the screen, and he hit it a couple of times. So I mean, we were really splitting hairs at that point. They've got it's going to be interesting to see what 2023 is going to look like, but. You ended up having somebody like that. You look at what Ohio State's been able to do with quarterbacks, even if he was able to come to Ohio State and that was the decision he made and it didn't work out. He get a couple years under one of the best quarterback teachers in the college game right now. And you never sit there and offer a kid expecting, oh well, if he's going to transfer, but that's what people are going to want to talk about at that point. I think that we're looking at a situation that would work out very well. We're only 1 camp through. It'll be interesting to see other quarterbacks that they might be looking at, but they had 2 there. In order to one to push the other one, and they made their decision with that offer. Does that mean that Jax Leatherwood may not get an offer? He may not. I mean, maybe they'll watch the tape and feel differently at that point. Maybe that's the way that the cards are going to shape up. But at this point, 1 offer's out, and that we know of at quarterback.
All right, and just for the record, Dripping Springs, Texas is kind of just west of Austin. It looks like kind of an exurb of Austin. I can't believe you don't know it. There are a whole 4,650 people who live there. It sounds like a major megalopolis in Texas. I'm surprised you didn't know more about it. I guess we may all get a chance to learn about it if Ohio State has a quarterback from there pretty soon. You mentioned, they were doing the throwing inside because we had seen the quarterbacks out on the field. You went over there and it was like, neither of the guys we're looking for are out here. I wonder where they are. There are other quarterbacks out here. Where are the 2 guys we're looking for? And that is usually our clue or our cue to go run inside and say, aha, they must be working out privately with Ryan Day and Corey Dennis inside. And they were. You mentioned the 1-inch drill. That's something that I think Tony Gerdeman and I have talked about a few times on this show and on Buckeye Weekly as well. Basically, they have a big like almost like a net set up with like a metal frame, kind of like what you would see like a pitcher throw behind at batting practice at a baseball stadium or something like that. But it's just a big square, maybe 8 feet square all around. And the idea is they set it up 25 or so yards downfield. And the idea is the quarterback is supposed to throw it 1 inch over the top. It's supposed to represent a defender jumping up and his, the top of his fingertips. And you're supposed to throw the ball 1 inch above that screen. And, you will see guys generally be very cautious and they throw it 3 feet above the screen and then 2 feet above the screen. And as soon as Novosad did it, one of his first throws or his second throw, he hit the top of it and bounced over. And it was like, you didn't do it exactly right, but you feel like that's what Ryan Day is looking for. Like, you're not playing it safe. You were really kind of pushing the very edge there, and you can make that throw where you're throwing it kind of on a line that far and, skipping it off the top of that screen. He, that was the moment that I kind of thought, that might be the guy who gets the offer. As far as, commitment, likelihood of commitment and all that, Mark Givler made a great point on the noon update show that we did on Wednesday, which was, if you're committed to Baylor, and he is, you're not coming up to Ohio just to enjoy the beautiful Columbus weather. You're coming up to Ohio, to Columbus, to try and earn an offer. And the reason is, if you earn an offer, there's a decent chance you're going to take it. That's not something you're necessarily, you're not trying to leverage something out of Baylor with that. So now that he has an offer, it's, we'll see if they offer anyone else, but we can talk about commitment watch at some point, probably there as the days go by. Right after we watched those quarterbacks throw, I headed over to where the defensive backs were working, kind of on the other, one of the back corners of the field. That might have been the most loaded position group of the day. There were 5 guys working there, all of whom are potentially good enough to land an Ohio State offer at some point. And then on Wednesday afternoon, 3 of them ended up earning an offer. Let's start with 2023 prospect Jermaine Matthews out of Winton Woods High School. You actually got a chance to talk to him after camp, so what did he have to say?
Yeah, I ended up speaking to him in about the 15, 20-minute window between the end of camp and when he got his offer. So we were talking about the offer hypothetically because he didn't have it yet. Very confident kid. I think he felt like the offer was coming. I think we all felt like the offer was coming from the day that he had. Somebody who's going to decide July 4th, which could be a big day for Ohio State when you look at defensive lineman Darren Reed out of Georgia, also with a July 4th commitment date. So, Matthews went out there and, he was loud and joyful through the whole process, but it was because he was playing well. I mean, if he was getting beat and just having a horrible day, I don't think he would have been laughing and carrying on as much. And a lot of the Ohio State players who were serving in counselor roles were cheering him on as he was out there. And just, he really had a look of him. He's got good enough size. I mean, he's not going to be your 6'2" corner, but, Ohio State certainly has kind of gotten away from that 5'9", 5'10" corner. And, Jermaine Matthews, fits that build. And, I was very impressed by him. This camp 1 was not necessarily supposed to be one of the deep camps. We don't know what each camp is going to look like. I couldn't tell you, the July 14th or June 14th camp is going to look like this. I don't know until we get closer to it, but generally the first one isn't going to be that one. And you're right. In that defensive back group, there were a lot of guys, and I think that Jermaine Matthews did a lot to maybe be the guy who caught my eye the most out of that position group.
Yeah, he was credited with running a 4.35 40, which, I think we all kind of look with a little bit of a jaundiced eye at hand-timed 40s at a camp, and, would that match up with a laser time? Maybe, maybe not, but that is one of the faster times. So however you want to skew those numbers, he was one of the fastest runners at camp on Wednesday. And, we talked about Ryan Day watching the quarterbacks, and that wasn't a big surprise. When Ryan Day came over and watched all the defensive backs working out, that was like, okay, so there are offers coming here, because this is Ryan Day officially putting his seal of approval on it, because someone else has said, hey, you should come watch this kid, because I think we want to offer him today. And Jermaine Matthews was one of them. There were 2 others, but there was at one point where Ryan Day, Jermaine Matthews was kind of walking over to the water station, and Ryan Day was like walking with him, talking with him on the way to the water station. It was like, is he getting offered right now? That's not how they typically do it, but when Ryan Day is taking time to talk to a player on the defensive side of the ball at a camp, that's like, there is something going on here. So that was not a big surprise that he ended up earning an offer. Another guy who it was not, maybe a little more surprising, I guess, was 2024 prospect Garrett Stover. Yes, he is related to Cade Stover. There was a little bit of a family resemblance that Kevin noted while we were there. He too received an offer on Wednesday. And, to me, Kevin, to offer an in-state player 18 months before signing day, especially one who is cousins with Cade Stover, knowing you're immediately going to be right at the top of his list, you have to feel pretty good about what you saw.
Yeah, related, unrelated, that doesn't matter to me, because if you offer an in-state kid, you have to be ready to accept him 5 seconds after you extend that offer, because for so many of these players, they grew up watching Ohio State. I mean, that was what that was around them, and things are different now than maybe a generation ago, with every game being on TV, and anybody you want to watch, you can generally find if you're motivated enough. But Ohio State certainly is the main game in town in this entire state. So, if a kid, hey, we're going to offer you, great, I take it. Well, we were offering you, but we weren't offering you. You don't do that. So when you bring in a 24 like Stover, as you mentioned, I mean, you're definitely sold on the player at that point. It's certainly a situation of, I mean, even if the kid's like, well, it doesn't matter because I'm not going to decide till my senior season. We certainly have seen kids get caught up in the moment, and then they immediately decide, whether or not it's on campus, or they get home, or they sleep on it for a night. They're like, yeah, I don't really need to fritter around with any more of this. This is what I want to do. So, Ohio State certainly is got to be more than 100% sold on Cade's cousin out of Big Walnut, to with what he's able to do. And he certainly has a look about him. Playing defensive back isn't necessarily a position that we've seen Cade at, so maybe Garrett's got a little bit of an advantage over there in terms of that position, but we've seen Cade at pretty much everywhere else at Ohio State.
Yeah, Garrett Stover is listed at 6'2", 195 on his recruiting profile. Our buddy Mick Walker was there, former Buckeye Scoop recruiting analyst, now works for the Purdue 247 site and covers Cincinnati as well. So he was at the camp as well. I was standing next to him when Garrett Stover walked over, and Mick said, "You look like you're bigger than you were when I saw you in basketball season." And Garrett Stover said, "Yeah, put on 6-8 pounds since then." And he walked away. And I said to Mick, yes, I too have put on 6-8 pounds since basketball season, but you're not flattering me about it. And, Garrett Stover looks like whatever weight he put on, a lot of these guys are working out without shirts on. Whatever weight he put on was good weight. And so, if he was at 195 at basketball season and he's put on 6-8 pounds and he's still got another 18 months to go, you wonder if he maybe ends up at linebacker instead of safety. He's got another 18 months or so of growing to do. But yeah, that seems like one that might be worth kind of having might move to the top of the potential next commitment list, I would say. Last up among the defensive backs was a guy that Mark and I talked about on yesterday's show. That is 2024 corner Aaron Scott from Springfield. He was playing with one good hand and still did enough to earn an offer. What did you get to see out of Aaron Scott?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly recognized him right off the bat. He had a Springfield shirt on, so I was like, "Oh, I know this kid's out of Springfield." Good size. I mean, he's going to have to put on some weight, but we're talking about a 24 at this point. He's got time to do that. We don't have to worry about putting him on the emergency Mickey Marotti plan or anything else. But going out there and competing at the level that he did, kind of one-handed, is impressive. Somebody who was willing to fight through the adversity. I think that shows a lot right there. And again, you look at another kid, Springfield, for those who are from outside the state and don't know the geography that well, is not too terribly far away from Columbus right now. And, it is an Ohio State crazy area where, maybe Springfield has certainly sent kids, to all sorts of various schools through the years. I mean, there's always a school that seems to have a lot of talent. They'd split into the 2 high schools. Now they're back down to 1 high school. So they're even more stacked because everybody's at the 1 school. But, I thought that Scott had a good day. I would have certainly liked to see him unencumbered by that, the wrap and the cast that he had on his hand. But, I will defer to the new defensive back coaches, Perry Aliano and Tim Walton. And if they liked what they saw, it just validates my feelings.
Yeah, and Springfield is a school that, I mean, more recently, like Danny Davis, the Wisconsin wide receiver, came out of Springfield. Braxton Miller, everyone's saying Huber Heights Wayne right now. He was actually a Springfield kid and then ended up at Huber Heights Wayne. So there's been a bunch of talent out of Springfield over the years. There were a couple that kind of covers the afternoon. Kevin will have a chance to share any other thoughts he has on the afternoon guys, which is like the skill position guys and linebackers and defensive backs and quarterbacks and running backs and wide receivers and all that. So we'll get to any more of that he has thoughts on later. But I wanted to move to the morning session. We've talked a good bit about this with Mark Givler already. You can hear his thoughts on a bonus episode that we dropped on the Buckeye Weekly feed on Wednesday afternoon. But there were a couple notable guys in that morning session. One was 2023 edge rusher Jalen Thompson out of Cass Tech in Detroit. Speaking of schools that have produced some talent for the Buckeyes over the years, Mike Weber, Damon Webb. That defensive line group, Kevin, was pretty loaded this morning. And Jalen Thompson, he really stood out.
Yeah, I mean, we were all sitting there looking for another player that we'll get into here in a second. But, Jalen Thompson comes in and he has a look. Cass Tech always has great talent. It's whether or not Ohio State can really get into one of those Michigan State feeder schools, and Ohio State has been able to in past years. And you can't get them all, and Ohio State's gone and beaten those two schools out for kids before. But he had his shirt on from another one of the combines, Under Armour something, and was wearing a 44. And I asked two different people. I'm like, immediately, who is that kid? Who is that kid? And I didn't have to ask it a third time, because once he started performing, you really saw it. There was no question in my mind that he was going to solidify that offer at that point. And and it didn't take long after that morning session was done for him to get it. Not necessarily the biggest kid, but there's a reason why you have rush-ins. There's a reason why you have threes. There are reasons why you have zero techs. You're not, Jalen Thompson's not somebody that you're going to hang a ton of weight on. But he's also somebody who's maybe a little bit heavier than you expect. He's so athletic that he carries the weight really well. A problem that I had for the first 40 years of my life, and I managed to lose for the last 10.
Yeah, he is. He was impressive. I was right there with you. I was looking at someone else and just looked over and it was like, I don't know who that is, but that's someone. I am quite certain that is someone, and it was someone. He did, as Kevin said, earn an offer. And now we'll play the waiting game. Kevin, I guess I'm contractually obligated to ask. Could he be a Leo? If he's a little on the small side, could he be a Leo or whatever Jim Knowles is calling it?
Ohio
if it's not
State
a Leo,
doesn't have any Leos right now. That's the king of the jungle. They have Jacks.
Jacks,
yes,
that's
they
right.
don't have any Leos. You got to earn that. He certainly could fit that bill. It's funny because that Leo / Jack is turned into the H of, oh, this guy's an H and that guy's an H, and Noah Brown at 244. Well, that's an H too. Well, what the H? Because I don't think anybody knows what that is, and I think at least with the Leo Jack or the Jack Leo, we have a better idea of what the body type is and kind of what the responsibilities are. But yeah, I would say that Jalen Thompson's somebody who I think that could fit that role if given the opportunity.
All right, we have done our contractually obligated mention of. We started with the quarterbacks. We mentioned the Jack. Okay, so now we can get to the guy that Kevin sort of was talking about earlier. Someone who hasn't even started high school yet. 2026 edge rusher Tyler Atkinson out of Georgia. I talked to Mark about him on yesterday's show, and I still think it's fairly irresponsible to be heaping too many expectations on a kid who literally just finished middle school. But with that being said, he also lived up to the billing for me on Wednesday. He was working with that top group with Larry Johnson, with a lot of other talented players, did not look physically at all out of place among guys who were 2-3 years older than him. You not only got to watch him, but also to talk to him afterwards. So what were your impressions of Tyler Atkinson?
The last question of the interview, I asked him, I said, do you realize that you're so much more mature than any 8th grader, going into high school kid that I've ever talked to in my life? And, he kind of laughed. He's like, well, my parents stay on me about it. But you see a kid like this, and offers can be a very copycat-ish type of situation. Somebody gets in, and then, oh, well, Alabama's offered him, so UGA gets in. Well, UGA got in, so Miami gets in. Well, Miami's offered him, so Michigan gets in. Well, Michigan's offered him, so Ohio State gets in, and so on, and so on, and so on. And that's how sometimes these kids end up with 20, 30, 40 offers before they've ever really emerged. Well, based on what I've seen today or on Wednesday, he is every bit as good as you would expect for a kid that's already sitting at 20 offers without playing a down of high school football as a high schooler. Again, not the biggest kid, but we sit there and we talk about a junior and say, well, he could grow. This kid is, I don't even know how old he is. He's going to grow. He's going to grow. I mean, most kids are not maxed out after 8th grade. So he's going to grow. It's going to be a matter of him, you know, doing the right decisions in terms of not letting his body get away from him, but the kid has tremendous genetics. I mean, obviously has just a great support system around him in terms, he is such a great young man that you know that he's got people around him that have his best interests in mind. Very, still a lot of humility. Give him a year or two in terms of this. Let's see if that humility's still there, but I have a feeling it will be. But in terms of just what we saw out there, I mean, just full effort. I mean, I was a little disappointed in a selfish manner that I didn't get to see him run. He didn't run the 40. He doesn't need to run the 40, in my opinion, at that point. That was just, again, I was curious to see what he would run. But he went through all the other drill work. And, I mean, he was there competing with guys that were 3-4 years older than him. And, not only was he competing, he was winning reps. He looked really good during one-on-ones. In my interview with him, I did place a lot of, as an industry term, B-roll. I put a lot of highlights of him in there in the beginning of it to try and make sure that people had a chance to see. But, I think if you showed that video to 20 people and just said, look at this kid, nobody would sit there and think that he was not only just an 8th grader, but I don't think anybody would think he was anything but a rising senior, to be quite honest.
Yeah, like I said, he was around guys 3 years ahead of him in school and didn't look at all out of place. So, and not just guys who happen to be older. It was also the way they split those camps up. If you're in the group that's working with Larry Johnson, you are in the top group. There's no filler there, and he looked very much a part of that group, if not the best member of that group at times. So yes, that was pretty darn impressive. Was there anyone else who jumped out to you, or any other position groups that you wanted to touch on before we call it a show?
I could go through so many kids, and I'll try and save some of it because we have plenty of other shows to fill moving forward. But Will Smith Jr., the Ohio State commit, was there, and this was by far the most impressed that I've been with Will Smith Jr. And I say that in a way of I've never not been impressed by him, but he looked really good today. Lined up at inside on the line and just did a lot of good things. He got a lot of great feedback from Larry. Got a lot of great feedback from the other coaches. It was just a very impressive outing. The position that I'm most curious about, I still don't really have any great answers. That's tight end. A group led by Tavion Galloway out of, I think he's at Chillicothe now. I think he was at Unioto or one of the schools around there. Now I think he's at Chillicothe. Doesn't have the offer. Going back to the earlier discussion about the in-state kid, you better be darn sure that you're willing to take the kid. And I think they got a lot of kids that are close on the board. So I think they're still trying to do their due diligence. Ohio State does have one tight end in the class already with Ty Lockwood. Certainly looking to bring a second one in. If it happens, I think there are a lot of good options. If it doesn't, then it doesn't. You just kick that can down the road a little bit more. Beyond that, I mean, a local kid that, is a 24 that, was in the A group with some of these guys that we mentioned. I don't know if he's going to end up at Ohio State, but Angelo McCollum out of Olentangy, big fan of his. He's such a great kid. I really want to see good things for him. That's the thing. We don't really meet a lot of kids and go, oh, that kid's just not a great kid or whatever. But when you really meet a great kid, it's hard not to cheer for him a little bit. And McCollum's one of those kids.
Yeah, there was a lot to be impressed with on and off the field on Wednesday, and as you said, it was that first camp of the season is not necessarily the one that you think of as being the one that's just loaded with talent. So I think there's going to be, you've got a lot of visits coming up, officials and unofficials, to camps next week, and then after that, so there's a 7-on-7 camp. I think there's going to be a lot of fun stuff to talk about, a lot of fun stuff to write about and podcast about, and shoot photos of and shoot video of. So it's going to be a fun month. Everyone always thinks of June as a really dead month in college football. It's like, you can make it not a dead month with if you go out and go to some of these camps. There's a lot of fun stuff to talk about there, and you see these guys now and you don't necessarily know their names. And then a year from now, it's like, oh yeah, remember when we saw him? Now he's a 5-star prospect. Now he's, you see these kids. I'm sure you've been doing this longer than I have. So you've seen kids who are, now part of national championship teams. And, you get in early, get to see the guys, get to see them before, seeing a popular band in a small club who are, where we saw these guys before it was cool. And now by listening, now you guys know all about them before it was cool as well. So welcome to our hipster podcast. Thank you for joining us. That'll do it for today. Thank you, Kevin. It was, we have plenty of coverage at Buckeye Scoop. I'm going to guess Kevin will probably do a Big Me Kickoff podcast about this. Mark Gifler and Bill Green will probably do a Gives in the Bank about this. Alex Gleitman will probably end up catching up with one of these guys on Around the Oval. There should be lots to talk about all these guys, and then next week get to do it again. Another 2 camps, Monday and Tuesday next week. So lots of fun stuff going on, lots to talk about around the Ohio State football program. So that'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.